Okay, I want to work through one of these quiz questions here, number 2 in particular. So, to illustrate the effects of driving under the influence of alcohol, a police officer brought a DUI simulator to a local high school, and student reaction time in an emergency was measured with unimpaired vision and also while wearing a pair of special goggles to simulate the effects of alcohol on vision. So for a random sample of 9 teenagers, the time in seconds required to bring the vehicle to a stop from a speed of 60 miles per hour was recorded. Completes parts A and B. And then it says, note, a normal probability plot and a box plot of the data indicate the differences are approximately normally distributed with no outliers. Okay, so part A, I'm going to let you think about that one. Okay, I'm going to look at part B, the computational part. So we need to open up this table here to view the data. And so we have the normal subjects here in X sub I and the impaired subjects in Y sub I. We can kind of take a gander at their times. It looks like, so subject 1 was normal and impaired, and then subject 2 is normal and impaired, and so on. So we need to open this up in statcrunch. You could put this in the TI, but let's use statcrunch here. So open in statcrunch. And my data is in statcrunch now. What I need, though, is the differences. So I need to have another column here in variable 4 just called diff. Now notice we need to know which way to subtract. And it tells us here, we're going to do impaired minus normal. Impaired minus normal. So that means I'm working with the data here. So I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to compute an expression. Now you could just subtract each one of these and put them in there, but we're going to let statcrunch do this for us. Now let's use the build command here if you're not familiar with the syntax. And again, we're going to do impaired, so add column, minus normal, and then add column. And we'll click OK. And we're putting this in the diff column. I'll relabel this diff and compute. So it did not like me having me already labeled that, so I'm gonna delete that column. So it's under edit and then columns, and we're going to delete. And I'm going to delete this first diff column. And there we go. Okay, so there is our data, and we're going to run a 95% confidence interval to find out what the difference is. It looks like the impaired difference, it's positive for every one of them. So let's run a confidence interval on that. So we're going to go over here to t-statistic, 1 sample, because we're only going to look at the difference between those. So 1 sample, and we have a choice between with data or with summary. So we don't have the summary statistics. We have the actual raw data. So I'm going to choose with data. And so I'm going to run a confidence interval. And so I'm going to click that. Well, first let's do we're going to select our column, diff. No need to group or anything. We're not running a hypothesis test this time. We're running a confidence interval. And I believe it was 95%. And we'll just click compute. And so it gives us the lower limit and the upper limit. So let me show you another way to do this one. If you didn't want to compute the difference, that's sort of what I'm used to doing, but statcrunch does have, when you go to t-statistic, they have this paired down here. And this is what we have. We have a paired statistic. So we're going to run paired. And we're going to run a confidence interval. Notice that our difference is mu1 minus mu2. And so this is where we have to put mu1 is impaired minus normal. So I had to think about that for a second, right? Because it wanted me to do impaired minus normal. So sample 1 is mean 1, sample 2 is mean 2. And click compute. And notice we get exactly the same confidence interval. 0.6659 to 1.2496. What kind of conclusion can we draw from this? So remember, with confidence intervals, if our interval contains 0, there's the likelihood that these could be not significantly different. But our interval does not contain 0, right? We're going from 0.66 to 1.25. If I was going from like -1 to 2, it would contain 0. But our difference here is all positive, or if they're all negative, they're both negative, you're going to be okay as far as being sufficiently conclusive that there is a difference here. So there is sufficient evidence to conclude there's a difference in braking distance, braking time with impaired vision and normal vision. And that difference is somewhere between 0.66 and 1.25 seconds. And we saw when we computed the mean on that, it was about almost a second. So I hope that helps in using statcrunch on how to find paired t-test intervals. And if you want to run a confidence interval, you just select the hypothesis test. You would just select hypothesis test from that same menu.